Hey friends, Tashin here. I want to talk about listing your talking points. And this has been such a valuable exercise for me, even just for myself, but also, of course, for relating to other people, that I want to talk at some length about it. I heard about this from Visa, as with many good ideas, and Visa suggests listing your talking points. And I've seen him do it. I've seen other friends do it, and I've done it multiple times, certainly in 2021, and then also most recently in 2023. Might be time for another round soon, I don't know, but I'll link my 2023 talking points in the notes to this. But the first time I heard Visa talk about this, I had a little bit of an ick, I will admit, because it sounded like a politician trying to run for election, like having specific talking points that they needed to memorize so as to persuade people to vote for them and win an election. It's just like, well, that's not really, that vibe is, that makes sense for politics, but that's not necessarily how I want to relate to showing up on the internet. But that's not really the point. The point isn't to persuade people to vote for you. The point is to clarify your own thinking and then be better positioned to help other people, I guess is how I would say it. So, you know, I talk to a lot of people. I have a lot of conversations with a lot of people in a lot of contexts. I'm always talking to people, and that's part of my work. Always be talking to people. And I talk to people on the phone. I talk to people on Zoom calls. I talk to people in person. I'm DMing with people. I'm text messaging with people. I'm emailing with people. I'm replying to their threads, etc. Always talking to people. And as part of that, you find that there are certain things that you like to talk about, and there are certain points that you tend to repeat. And noticing that there are recurring patterns with what you talk about and how you talk about it is really valuable information. And you also notice over time, oh, this is really resonant for people. Like, this is valuable for people to hear. Everyone has these valuable perspectives and opinions within themselves that are not evenly distributed outside, that other people would benefit from hearing. And if you know what those are, and you also know how to frame them in a clear, resonant, persuasive way, then that means that it's going to be able to help other people sooner. So, and really for oneself, it does just clarify your thinking. Like, this is what I think about this topic, and coming to clarity about that. So there's a really nice Visa thread where he talks about, he shows a map, and it's like cities, and I think he talks about Jane Jacobs, is it? And how commerce and exchange and trade are part of how cities work. And the same kind of thing can happen with your talking points, where if you make connections between different talking points and see larger themes, then more wealth or value or benefit is created. It's not like financial wealth strictly, it's like benefit of these ideas. They're more powerful ideas if you see certain themes in your thinking, or, oh, this thing that I thought was about this one topic actually relates to another topic. So for example, one connection I made at some point that's been very, very valuable to me is, oh, productivity and strategy, at least the way that I see them and practice them, are actually about the same kinds of questions, and they're thematically very similar, but productivity is about individual agency and your own capacity to do things in the world that you care about. And strategy is about collective coordination, and how does an individual or group relate to other individuals or groups, and how do you coordinate to accomplish goals or move towards directions that you care about. Like, that analog has been so useful to me because, one, there's just a lot of consequences of connecting those dots that I won't get into here. But and then certain other themes or patterns tend to recur. And the more you develop your own inner thinking, the more that you become aware of those connections. And also, the more you talk to other people about those connections, the more you see what's resonant, what's valuable to other people, and also which metaphors or stories or turns of phrases are really generative for people. I think Visa has talked about how do 100 thing is not something that he expected to take off as much as it has, but it's been so valuable to other people, including me. And, it was just kind of a thing that I guess he riffed on, and then he was like, oh, people seem to really resonate with that, and then you can double down on it and say more about it and help people more in that way. And so it's really valuable to list your talking points, even just for yourself, to clarify your own thinking. And so here's how I would suggest doing it, is what are make a list of the kinds of things that you're interested in, the kinds of things that you like to think about or read about or talk about, that you find yourself talking about with your friends or whatever. And then within each of those things, ask yourself, are there things that I recurringly talk about here? And you can write, the format of a tweet is a really good format for this, because you can do a thread of these where it's just 140 or 280 characters is about the length that you need to say a talking point well. It's just a brief articulation of the thing. With each of them, probably you could write a whole thread or a blog post or a book or make a YouTube video about. But just having the initial seed, for me, keep love in your heart. That means something to me specifically, and I can tweet about it, or I can make art about it, or I have a whole video about it. I can make more videos. I could write a whole book about what that means. I've written a blog post about it. That's a node in my inner world, and articulating that to myself, knowing that that's something I care about, is really useful. And then I can see how it connects. For example, love, curiosity, and empowerment. That's how I did my 2023 talking points. Was I listed a lot of talking points about love and curiosity and empowerment. And I actually used the books that I'd written about them to generate that list. I turned the chapters into brief summaries. And that was useful because at that point I'd written, if I recall correctly, I'd written the love book at that point, and then I was halfway through writing the empowerment book with Mary, and I hadn't yet written the curiosity book. But Mary and I already had a list of chapter headings, so I just used that to write the point briefly, which helped with writing the chapters later. And then when it came time to write the curiosity book in 2024, I already had a bunch of talking points that I could copy and paste into specific chapters for that book. And it really helped with the writing process for that. So even, again, just for oneself, there can be a lot of benefit to taking the time to think clearly about what it is you like to think about, what recurring things you find yourself saying, and to articulate as well as you can. In the Talking Points 2023 edition that I did, I really tried to put them as strongly and persuasively as I could, even just to remind myself. I wanted them to be punchy and memorable and impactful and inspiring, and I think they do a good job of that. And that's really useful as well, even just for myself, but also for other people, because they tend to be more resonant. And but it can also be sloppy. It can just be hey, these are the 3 things I'm really interested in right now, and here's just 3 or 4 or 5 different points about each of them that are things that I think about. Here's what we should do about environmentalism, or here's about autism or something. Whatever it is, if you have your special interests or the things you're on about, you probably already know what you think about them, at least to some degree, at least for parts of it. And just taking the time to articulate briefly some of the main points that you find yourself saying again and again, or that you think, or even that you haven't written down yet. And you may surprise yourself, because if you put them down in just brief, even tweet format, again, 140, 280 characters, when you put them all together next to each other, you might be oh, I hadn't taken the time, or I hadn't noticed this yet, but I actually think this other thing about this that I had never said before, or never noticed within myself, but I do think this about it. And it's an obvious consequence of these other things. And it's there's a level of thinking that you're thinking at that's not just about one node, but you can kind of see the larger picture. And then you start to make these connections of, oh, this is related to that, and this is related to that. And if you're a Twitter user like I am, that can be really helpful to have a thread of these, because then you can reference them later or quote tweet them. And then, if you do have a map of your talking points in some form or another, then that's a really useful prerequisite for something that becomes available to you, which is I would describe as creating a corpus where, I have my blog, for example, or I'm increasingly making this corpus of videos where each of those talking points is like a node that you can expand into a blog post or a video or a book and say more about. And that's really useful to people. Like, if this is a topic that you care about, that you have thoughts about, that you're passionate about, that you're interested in, that you want to share with the world, that you want to do things about in the world, then having like canonical blog posts about them or a canonical video or whatever it is, different mediums work for different people, is really valuable for like being a signal to the world. Like, hey, this is something I'm on about. This is something I care about. Here's the introduction to my thinking about it. It doesn't have to be the final word, and you can always make another video or make another artifact later, but it's really valuable to have that like stake in the ground of, hey, if you're interested in this topic and you're interested in my perspective on it, then like here's a place that you can go watch this video about this thing. And that's also just useful to save your own time, because like I'm thinking of, for example, the Digital Productivity Coach, where James and I made the Digital Productivity Coach in 2019, I believe. And part of that was because we were so into productivity, people kept asking us for productivity advice, which was fine, but there were too many people to help as much as we'd like to. And we were like, oh, we should just create a reusable resource that we're having a lot of the same conversations over and over again. And that's kind of, I don't know, it's not so much annoying as it is like, it doesn't scale well. And so if you find yourself repeating yourself, you say the same things over and over again, that's a good sign that you should create some kind of digital artifact that you can point other people to. Like, I don't know, I have so many of these now, but like, hey, if you're interested in like prerequisite trees, then here's this thing that you can see. Or, oh, you want to learn about productivity? Here's this. Or, oh, you want to learn about loving kindness meditation? Here's this. Or whatever it is, there's so many resources I've created about so many things. Then I can just send people that. And of course, if they have further questions, then I can answer them. But it's like, hey, I just read this article before you ask me more questions. And then when they do ask you questions, that can be fuel for further content. And then it's, that creates a feedback loop where more people find you and the content gets better. Your thinking gets refined. You're more able to help other people. That's really an angle that matters to me with all of this, is that this is actually how we serve the world. Like, all of us have unique perspectives and opinions and experiences that we're drawing from that other people don't have. And it's a gift to offer that to the world, to share, hey, this is how I think about this thing. And I want you to know about it. Like, even a very niche topic, there's going to be someone who cares about what you think about that and will benefit from it. And it does the world a service to share that. And it also puts you in position to serve people even more deeply, because you get feedback. People are like, well, this doesn't make sense. Or what do you think about that? Or, oh, have you seen this blog post? Or have you seen this book? And then they help you to dive deeper into it in all these ways. And that feedback from the world, whether it's constructive or connecting the dots or introducing you to someone or, paying for a service or whatever it is, all of that feedback helps you get even better at it so that you can help the world even more. And it creates a virtuous cycle. And I love that. My life has been built on that for years now, where I'm creating these virtuous feedback loops between all of my projects and all of my endeavors. And it just gets better and better. It's an upward spiral. Yeah, so that's really valuable. And I don't know, it's been a good process for me. And it's not so much about like, this sort of like politician metaphor, but on the one hand, for yourself, just clarifying your thinking, and for the world, it's of service to offer that thinking. And then that creates virtuous feedback loops between yourself and the world. And it helps you to get better at what you're doing, to articulate what you think really clearly, and to see what resonates for people, and then to create more of that. And it just keeps going. So that's why I'd suggest listing your talking points. It's pretty simple. Make a list of the topics that you are interested in, that you like to talk about or think about or learn about. And then within each of those, make a bullet point list of like one tweet each for as many ideas as you can. And you get to decide how much or how little you want to do and whether you share it or not. But even just for yourself, clarifying that thinking is really valuable. And you know, if I've sent this video to you, for example, like it means I think that you have something valuable to offer the world about, you know, a topic or multiple topics, and that the world needs to hear that. So please do that work and share your perspectives and opinions and advice with the world so that the world can benefit, and yeah, we flourish together. So there are certain topics that I'll maybe never dive into deeply as much as you will, and topics that I'll dive into deeply that you never will. And the fact that we can create resources for each other to share means that we can all level up more quickly. So I'm all about that. So anyway, I hope you are well. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any thoughts about this, I'd love to hear about them. And feel free to make a comment or message me privately. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I'd be curious to see your talking points too. If you make a list of your talking points, if it's a tweet thread or a blog post or whatever, feel free to send those along too. Okay, best wishes, friends. Sending you love. Take care.